And we are live again. Hi, everybody.
Good evening.
We'll say hello to everybody for the first few minutes, actually, because as you begin to log on. But today we're going to be talking about haunted houses.
Yes.
And some of our experiences with haunted houses. And if we can explain it.
Who's Nana?
Nana, have we have a new one? Hi
no,
to
Nana's been on before.
Oh, yeah. Yes, she has. Hi there, Nana. It's nice we get quite a few regulars joining us nowadays. I'm beginning to recognize. I think I recognise you as well.
No, I've not seen that.
No, I'm not sure. But we see all sorts of people coming from all over the world. Tell us where you're coming from. If you've got any stories today, don't forget we're going to be letting you ask questions and share your stories too. From Missouri, Vicky. Good. Nice to see you all joining us. Indigo Night from Hampshire, England. Well, that's just down the road from us because we're in Hampshire, of course, here in, you can tell from my accent. Milton Keynes. Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Yeah, so lots of you joining. We had quite a record number last week, didn't we?
From May.
So don't forget also when you're watching this, have a think and share this video. If you share it now, on Facebook, other people will be able to join, and your friends will start to join in, and you'll get your little group joining in. It's kind of a bit of a community. Agility bits. You're gonna have to change that photograph because I'm sure you're human. Lorraine Biggs, hi Lorraine, and Christina from Wareham in Dorset. Yeah, we go down that way quite a lot. Sally Halfpenny, she's a funny looking girl, isn't she? That's my cousin, that's why. So we've got Derby, people obviously joining from our own Facebook page. From Derby, oh yeah, that's interesting. That's where was Darlington up near? No, it wasn't, was it? Where Vi came from.
Maria.
Hi everyone. Brighton, yeah, everybody's packed on the beaches down there on Brighton today, aren't they? I saw on the news again, no social distancing. It must be terribly difficult for the locals there when you know that so many people are flooding the place. And from India, yes, we're always interested in the people from India. I love any ghost stories you might have from India too. I mean, do you believe in ghosts the same way as we do in the West?
It's Jen.
Hi from Wyoming. I always can never look at the word Wyoming without thinking of Frank Zappa.
Oh, hi, Waffer.
Hi from London, Jamie.
Jamie, baby.
And again, don't forget,
Chicago,
folks,
Adrian.
Don't forget to share this video as we're beginning to link on. We're going to get talking about these topics in a minute, but yeah, if you share it, you can your friends will probably join in as well, particularly if you're watching this from Facebook, and you can watch it from Facebook or from YouTube. That's if you follow our page, of course, on Facebook. Newcastle.
It's nice, isn't it, Vicky, that we're all connecting from all over the world.
And it does feel like that, doesn't it? And talking about that,
South Africa, Jenna.
We're going to do, I'll tell you about it later on. We're going to do some stuff with the patrons where we all connect and do a seance together in a haunted house. But we'll tell you about that later on. But stay tuned for that, particularly if some of you are obviously that are joining us who are patrons already.
Oh, wet, west of Scotland.
We'll tell you about that. Is it wet up there? I thought it was warm all over the country today. Sri Lanka, love your logo, nice one. And from Germany, yes, we've had Patricia on before from Germany, haven't we?
Yeah.
And Cape Town.
My parents used to live in Cape Town.
Yeah. And Holland, Netherlands. Yes, I used to live in Amsterdam for a while. From Hants again, so we've got quite a few locals. That might be because some people must come on from our own Facebook pages, I expect. And California, sunny California. Well, I expect it says it's probably dark there now, isn't it? What time of day? I don't know. There'll be daytime there by now, probably. Student from China now in Birmingham.
Big difference.
Well, I don't know. I think there's a big difference between what's going on in China at the moment. So. Okay, well, I suppose we better start now. People have sort of joined us. I suppose we could start actually talking about the topic tonight, which is haunted houses. Right. So we've had some pretty interesting experiences with haunted houses, haven't we? In our time,
there've been quite a few.
What would you think's one of the most interesting ones? I obviously know what you're talking about.
Well, we went to a cottage, the interesting cottage, and this woman wanted to move. Because,
that's the one that wasn't that far from us, was it?
Yeah.
It was in Hampshire.
It was a pretty cottage, and they actually had like oils running down the wall, like to throw them down, and they could hear footsteps going upstairs and a child crying.
And all the children's toys would come on all at once, wouldn't they? There, didn't they? Was that the same place he said about that?
I think so. And also, what was most interesting, in the garden they had a well, and she was digging around by this well, and she happened to find some china plates with all blue, like the old weeping willow ones. And she kept hearing a noise of a girl's voice down the well, and she thought it was strange. So they happened to look up in the parish records, and there was actually a child that had died in that cottage of consumption, going right back in time.
I remember we checked it in the records in the end, didn't we? And because they didn't know, they thought it was a child haunting the place, because I remember the kids' bedroom or something had a lot of problems there, because we're going back quite some years here. And I remember her talking about a red hand print that kept appearing on the wall, and they couldn't work out where it came from, and it was too high for the children to put it on there.
Well, this particular room we went in, it was freezing cold. They had central heating on and they had an open fire, but this room was cold, and that's where the hand was appearing and the oils coming down the
because it had a solid stone floor, didn't it? Like not just stone, but it was like the sort of stone you find all shiny, sort of big bricks of it,
like limestone. You mean? Yeah, and so we went in there actually to try and connect with the person that's gone over, and what it turned out, this child didn't want them to move, because they were going to move and put the cottage on the market, because it liked the children that were living in the cottage.
Yeah, that's what we felt, didn't we? I mean, and then of course you do all this, and you get it on television. They do these ghost hunts and things.
This is real.
But this was real, because we actually were able to find out that, we said, didn't we? Because I remember we said that we felt the child had fallen down the well or something. There was something about the well, wasn't there? Yes. And then she went and checked the parish records, and a child had actually died in that house and fallen down the well.
The child
confirmed it in the records.
She did have consumption. Now, if someone's got consumption, they would have coughed up blood and everything. So that's where it was very significant, the hand mark on the wall.
And they did have the... Did they find her grave? Because we're talking quite a long time ago with this one, actually.
1800s.
But no, I mean, when we actually saw the lady who came to us asking for help with this, I think she found the gravestone in the end, didn't she? The grave of the girl as well. Was she able to track? I remember she got it in the records.
I think they got it in the records. They didn't actually find the grave or the gravestone.
I couldn't remember.
But we're going back about 32 years ago.
Yeah, so that was one of our... That was one of the haunted. We did quite a lot of them, didn't we? When we've kind of first met, actually. Once the children came along, once Danielle came along, it wasn't so easy to go out chasing ghosts when people rang us up, because we had quite a few people used to just ask us, didn't they? And ask, well, we need help. And they used to put a lot of people onto us from the Spiritualist Church, from Eastleigh and Bittern and
shall we tell the one about the tugboat?
Yeah, that was an odd story too, wasn't it? Do you want to start off?
We're both bounced. We were asked by other mediums if we would go to this haunted tugboat. There was a gentleman that lived there and a lady, and she was a music teacher. And to actually get her to live on this boat, she was a music teacher actually. He took a grand piano and had the legs chopped off. Do you remember? Yeah, she wouldn't live on the boat. Yeah. And in order to get her on there, he actually wedged the piano. It was a grand piano, a mini grand, not a full grand, a half grand, I think they called it. And he'd wedged it into the front of the boat and nailed it to the side of the boat with 2 pieces of wood, hadn't he? Yeah. And, a real Jerry job, wasn't it? He slept up one end of the boat. She slept up the other end. And one night, her bed sheets were rolling slowly down the end of the bed, because she was frozen, because it goes back to an old legend that women are very unlucky to actually be on a boat. Yeah, actually saying that, just distracting from the story there. I remember your mother had that happen to her here when she stayed here. She said the bed shook up and down
and it rolled. You know, we'll have to get her in to talk about that next time she's down.
It's happened since in her
But that continued with the story, wasn't it? We were approached by Vision Spiritualist Church, I think it was, wasn't it? They needed a medium to try to go in there and sort it out. So we went together on that. We had some very weird experiences
leading up to it. We had to row out in a boat on the River Hamble.
Rowing out on a boat
go out a gangway
at night.
Go out a gangway, and it was all foggy, wasn't it?
Yeah,
misty.
yeah. I mean, it was quite this
spooky.
It was. They had a famous TV program used to be run from there, didn't it? But I can't remember the name of it. Howard's Way, wasn't it? Same place where they had for the set for that. But you actually go across the water to get to it at night, rowing. You know, it was really quite. And we had another medium with us, didn't we? Because there was that medium was a bit worried about doing it on her own, I think. So she called us in so we could do it as a group. So we had that other medium, you and me, and Michael from the church came along, wasn't it? That was just someone else was there too, plus the man of the boat who was the husband, plus the woman. I think, was there someone else? I can't remember. There wasn't.
Maybe, but they all sat round a table, and we just had candlelight
in the boat. This is now we're talking about.
And the table was shaking, wasn't particularly levitating, and these keys were moving around, and you could feel a presence of somebody standing behind you, heavy breathing, and you could feel heat coming. Some parts were cold. And
the keys moving around. That, I mean, you skipped over that, but that was pretty weird to see that. And that wasn't because the boat was completely still. Yeah, completely still.
And Michael felt an axe go on his head. Do you remember? And because you start off with saying the Lord's Prayer and everything, and all of a sudden the lights from the candles, there was a gush of wind. We were in complete darkness. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And the medium herself.
It was like something. It really was like something out of a movie. I mean, you see them on telly and it's all set up, isn't it? But this was actually happening to us. It was.
Oh yeah, and there was a vicar there. That's right.
That was the vicar. Yeah. That's it. We had the vicar there too, and he was shivering. Terrified. Yeah. That was it. I forgot about the vicar. I did write this up, but years ago. But I should put that.
And I remember
I forgot about it.
Saying to the apparition, it was an old boy, and he didn't like women on the boat, so he wanted them
this is the spirit we're talking about now, isn't it? So people are clear. This is what Michael felt the axe. I felt the axe. We all felt it, didn't we? We all felt a thump in the middle of our head simultaneously.
Yeah, but you have to be strong, not frightened or anything, because they can really suck the energy out of you. And I
knew there was.
I can remember. Wait a minute, Craig. Let me finish. And then I can remember saying, "You're not welcomed on this boat. Just go towards the light." And that.
So we all meditated together to try to help the spirit towards the light. And there was, you would think it would be some psychological thing. Everybody sort of fallen into the same fantasy, but it wasn't. It was a real energy, a real feeling there, and there was a sense of it lifting, wasn't there?
Well, it did, and apparently it just lifted because we were there nearly all night, and the next day it just felt peaceful. And the lady said that that's the first time in her life on the boat that she felt really peaceful.
Although there was a strange thing about the woman, she almost wanted it to come back, didn't she? Because it did give her a lot of attention, and it often made me wonder whether, I know it certainly felt very real, but often made me wonder if it was something projected from her, because it was as she wanted to draw it back again. I noticed with her, she didn't like the fact that it had been cleared. Did you notice that with her?
No, I think it was very real, and I think
it was real.
She was generally frightened, and the energy on there was so strong, and we did get what I call a psychic smell as well. It wasn't pleasant. And the apparition or the poltergeist or whatever you want to call it suddenly left, didn't it? Then I believe the husband actually decided after we'd been that they would move from the boat. They were all pretty scared, weren't they?
Oh yeah, particularly the vicar. That's what I was laughing at. It was so funny. And Michael, our friend, he was scared. He was an ex-copper. Well, he was a copper at the time, wasn't he? He was a policeman at the time, I think. Yeah. Was he still in the police then?
Yes,
I can't remember.
Yeah.
And he was scared as well.
He was all like cigarettes like this.
That's it, one after the other. I remember he banged his head on the way in too. I remember banging his head, and he was unconscious. He thought the ghost had hit him. Yeah. So, you know, so that actually was probably one of the most strange. It wasn't a haunted house, but it was a haunted boat. That was one of the strangest.
And
we had,
the other one, historical house, we stayed the night at.
Athelston House,
yes.
You're thinking of now, aren't you? That was what we did this one for the BBC. And Athelston House, it'd been on Most Haunted, and all sorts of crazy things had gone on there, which all it turned out, you know, there was this thing about a monkey spirit there. And actually, I asked the woman there. I didn't know about that because I never watched Most Haunted. I didn't like it very much, frankly, as I've spoken before to some of the cameramen who told me what went on it. But obviously there's been a fake story was put on their website about a monkey, and one of the other mediums that went on there pretended to be that monkey and pretended to channel the monkey. Well, we didn't know anything about Athelston House before we went there, because when we went there, they took us there and we didn't know where we were going. We didn't know anything about it. They just gave us the directions as we were leaving, didn't they? This is where you've got to go to. There's your postcode you're going to.
And we actually took some students with us that very much wanted to train in the paranormal field. And we had stayed the night, and we were showing into this 4-poster room that had a chapel just in the end of the corridor that the room fitted in. And they had all these soldiers' uniforms.
Yeah, had this strange chapel connected to our room,
bedroom,
wasn't it?
Yeah.
A chapel in your bedroom.
Yeah, and I can tell you, it's the best night's sleep I had.
And it was a real classic English spooky.
And all the lights at 3 o'clock in the morning were going dimmer. Then we heard a pitch and scream because Craig had wound up like he does these young girls, saying that people had hung themselves.
I told them that their room was where they used to store the bodies right during the plague,
and they hung themselves,
they were hung, and that while you were laying down, you would probably be laying in the exact spot where a dead body would have been, and you might be superimposing over yourself. Well, they were absolutely terrified.
Well, actually, then at 4 o'clock in the morning, the fire alarms went off, and a log had taken itself off the fire and went in the middle of the hall, the Great Hall. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And then I happened to walk along on the gallery in my dressing gown, and I think they thought I was the Grey Lady, and then they started screaming more, didn't they? But actually, there was an apparition there of going right back to a gardener. He used to do all the topiary, all the trees and everything. And he showed us where his hat was kept, and we found it.
Yeah, it was quite an interesting one. I mean, we didn't come up with the dramatic sort of stuff that some of these other programs come up with, but I think what we got was genuine. And actually, when you get Jane and myself were the mediums, of course, there, but the people that were training with me were trainee mediums, and they were all pretty powerful themselves. So, you know, you've got 7 mediums in a place all at once, all thinking about spirits, and it's gonna attract things. I had another interesting one talking about old stately homes like that. I was asked to go to Longleat House. I used to promote a lot of movies. I worked on The Sixth Sense, and I worked on White Noise, but this was for House on Haunted Hill. It was to do the promotions for House on Haunted Hill. So they said, oh, well, let's get an interesting story. Let's send a medium to an old stately home and see if he picks anything up. And I was picking up this, that, and the other with the journalist. And as I was doing it, I mean, she didn't see it, but I saw it. That was the first time I'd actually physically saw a ghost walk through one wall, across the corridor, and across through the other. It was a fair distance from me, but it was definitely a spirit because there was nobody there. And unfortunately, she didn't see it, but I did. And it quite shook me because I've never seen what we call an objectified spirit. You know, when we connect with the spirit world, we see it all in our mind. This is where we get all the descriptions. And you don't often see it as a projected image, as somebody walking around the room. And that was the time that was one of the, I saw it, seen it before, but that was one of the most, I could say, intense moments of seeing something. It was like a classical ghost, that was. You've had things like that, haven't you? When you were at Cold East Hospital, I remember.
Well, I used to be a nurse, and I lived in a mansion. Sounds grand, but I can remember I actually did see a grey lady, but she was like, I would say from the First World War, and had bandages, and it was right at the end of my bed. So your natural instinct is to put your hand out to touch it, and my hand went right through it. Didn't think anything of it because I thought I was dreaming. And the next day I happened to mention it to a charge nurse on the ward, and he said, "Oh yes, that grey lady, she walks around and goes, she was to do the Montefiores that used to live in the mansion going right back. They were Jewish people and everything." And it was just sort of natural. I wasn't frightened, but and I can remember that we had sash windows. The window actually moved up by itself. A gush of wind came in, blew all the curtains, and then it just stopped because I just said go to my mind. And I think sometimes the spirit will test us at times, don't you, Craig?
And that you didn't really describe the place because the Coldy's Hospital was one of those old, what, Victorian hospital would it have been, or further back? That's real. It was I went up there after they closed it all down because we were looking up there, weren't we, to help with the Sai Baba group was going to buy it at one point, weren't they? But it was like, it was a really weird sort of place. It was more like it had a mental hospital too, wasn't it?
It was a hospital, 1939. They used to call it Hospital for the Mentally Subnormal, which I think was horrible, really. And they bought all the land, or the I think it was the Wessex group then, and it had stables there, a mansion, lodge houses. It was a really well-run hospital and a very good hospital. And they were very good to the patients. The mansion I lived in was a beautiful place. I mean, the driveway was beautiful. They've sold off all the land now and had houses built on there, but it was quite an impressive place. And they had a farm there that people used to work on. And apparently, I know another story. This patient I actually knew. I won't give her name, but she has been seen at Swanwick railway station.
This is near Southampton.
Yes, walking up the railway line, saying, "I've got to get back. I've got to get back." And somebody actually was waiting for a train one night and thought she was trying to commit suicide, and actually went to say, "Are you okay?" And she just disappeared into the ether.
Is that the one you're talking about that was at the well, I can't remember the name of it now. That used to be the asylum.
Well,
it was an asylum there, wasn't it?
Well, no, she was a patient. I knew her at Coldy's Hospital.
Yeah, okay. And, I remember there was some other ones.
And if you have a look, as people, because she lived at Portsmouth, she used to go on home visits and actually used to catch the train from Swanwick to Portsmouth. And actually, she must have passed, well, obviously she passed over, and people have actually seen her apparitions. She talked to them, and the same message: "I've got to get home. I've got to get back."
I remember. I've known had a few friends who had suffered from schizophrenia, which is a terrible illness. But I've often noticed that people that have what they used to call schizophrenia, they give it all different names now, but I still think of it as schizophrenia. They had full serious schizophrenia, and they often get things like voices and things like this. But I've seen phenomena happen around them. I've seen things move. I've seen things shudder and strange senses of energy around them sometimes. And it makes me wonder sometimes, like that hospital that you were describing there, where it had its own psychiatric wings and things, if sometimes people that, there is obviously mental illness that has problems with the functioning of the brain and how it works, and voices sound like they're outside of the person. But sometimes I think they do attract real phenomena, real physical phenomena that's actually witnessed with your eyes.
The psychokinesis, that they can make objects move. And some of the schizophrenics are absolutely incredible paintings, doing auras and details and everything. And some of them I think some of them might have been quite psychic as well, because they used to pick things up.
Yeah, yeah. I described that story before with that psychiatrist I went round and helped her, and she said with people that thought their places were haunted, and we saw that mist. So Jason here has got a question. Part one. Okay, he's obviously got a story. Had a friend from Taiwan tells me about how his factory in Shanghai was haunted by a very old lady who died during World War II bombings and terrorized his employees in the dorms as an angry ghost. Yeah, they think they believe that a lot in Thailand. Then part two, he's saying apparently she and many others drowned in a well located there, and she regarded it as her spot. So they called in a Taoist master to ritually welcome her and appease her spirit.
Well, I'd call them ghost spirits, aren't they?
Yeah, I'll carry on, get the rest of it. And my friend saw her himself, and his employees had complained that the old ghost lady had even kicked them in their sleep and chased them away. On the bright side, the Taoist ritual worked. Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting stuff with the Chinese belief in ghosts, actually, and because that's Chinese, although it's Taoist in Thailand, it comes from China.
They have ghost chairs they usually put out for their ancestors and welcome them.
Yeah, and they will burn money to the ghosts. In fact, not only do they burn spirit money to the ghosts, in order to make sure that they get all the luxuries in the world, that the Chinese, and I think it applies also in Thailand as well, will burn whole TV sets and things like that that's being sent up to the spirit world as their way of transforming.
Every year from the Chinese people, they send me red envelopes, don't they?
Oh, thanks, Marina, for giving a donation on the super chat. That is, thank you. Yeah, Taoism has got some very interesting ideas about ghosts and things like that too, you know, and spirits, and the Chinese believe that the ancestor is around us all the time, and it's not a belief, it's the true thing, isn't it? It's something we do, it's something we have. The spirit world is all around us. Have you seen the spirit world? Keep giving us your ideas here. So I'm going to read Zoe's now. I used to work in a clothes shop about 20 years ago, and one morning before we had opened up, we were stocking the shop, and I looked up and I saw a lady walk from a toilet door through the opposite wall. My colleagues saw exactly the same as me, and we knew it was real. Now, that is good evidence, because two of you saw it together. Because, you know, and I've often subscribed to this idea, you know, what are ghosts? You know, what's really going on there? Is that a spirit walking across? But would that spirit forever be bound to earth, repeating that same thing all the time? And you know, I often say sometimes that ghosts are sometimes perhaps like a recording in the energy field, like a video recording almost of in the world. But you know, if that was the case, that ghosts only existed in places where heavy things happened, then we'd see ghosts of the living, wouldn't we? Not just the dead.
That lady obviously had, that lady ghost, attachment to that building. So obviously it's like a memory recall and going backwards, because it's like attachment and the memories. So
you're thinking that could be a real spirit coming back to that place because she had attachment to that place.
Yes.
I think that makes sense. I think that makes sense to say that as one particular form. Another thought is that when we die, we have our normal spirit, as it were, the spirit that goes to the spirit plane. But we also have what's called the astral shell, like the energy, the spirit body that connects the physical body to the spirit body. So we have our spirit body that goes to the spirit world, but we also have our astral body, as it were, astral shell, that still hovers around the body. And sometimes that can still have enough energy in it to become like an animated ghost, as it were, that has no self-consciousness. It is not the actual person, it's just like the astral shell of that person. You've heard about that idea, have you?
Have any of you got any more stories about actual haunted houses or buildings? We'd love to hear from you.
And what do you think ghosts are? What are ghosts? I mean, there's a lot of theories about ghosts. I think that last question or comment was really good, because two of you saw it at the same time, and we had that situation where we saw that. We mentioned this before on this channel, but it was such a amazing thing when we saw that ball of light appear in our room like that going back a long time. Once you see two of you see the same thing together, you're completely convinced forever. Amazing. I mean, I saw that, and I, you know, totally 100% convincing. I mean, it was not some ephemeral thing, was it? It was real. It was absolutely solid.
Nana, let's be happy. When where my grandpa went in World War One is believed to be very haunted. I've just written about his World War One memories and have pictures inside the abbey in those times. So you're talking about Neckley?
Yeah, Netley Abbey, she says. That's near us. So you're obviously from Hampshire. Yeah, we took some photographs up there for my book, Messages from the Universe. It looks like it's all shot in India, but Domenico, in his clever ways with his cameras, set it all up in the ruins there, didn't we?
Yeah, and you really ought to go and see Domenico's pictures.
Yeah, go and see his channel, because if you look below in the comments, we've got Domenico's channel, we've got our other channel. Now you're probably watching this on my channel, which has got, but there's a second channel. This is streaming on that at the same time. That is just all the bits about me and Jane. All the bits when,
what about my channel?
There's going to be that one that's not up yet, but you'll be able to see all the stuff with Jane and myself when we go out doing all our picnics and all those sort of behind the scenes bits. And if you want unique stuff, you'll see it on the Patreon site, of course.
And I will have a channel as well, which I can answer.
No, we're going to have something set up so Jane will be able to do just talks with Jane too. You can do it live, or you can do it whatever. We're working on that one too. But don't forget, keep looking in the comments and follow the other channels. There's 2 other channels there at the moment worth following: Domenico's and our other secondary channel called Psychic Lifestyle. So where do we go from here? I've got any other interesting?
Here we go.
Oh, here we go. Another one's come up. I live in a 13th century house, and I've experienced doorknobs moving on their own accord, and doors flying open on their own. My cat was petrified and ran away, and also a friend has witnessed this phenomena.
Now that's very interesting, because animals have 6th sense. For an animal to actually sense that and see that obviously that animal can see it, and it's very real. So it's interesting, I think, when animals pick up and actually look up and see something. I don't feel that you've got anything to harm you. Doorknobs moving, bed sheets, doors banging, windows going, things. To me, that's normal.
Yeah, we get a lot of it in this house, and this house is not a spooky house. Most of you have seen quite a few shots around our house. It's not a spooky place, but we still get some interesting and strange phenomena. I remember your brother freaked out once, didn't he? He saw a dark figure walk through the room.
No, it suddenly built up. And when my children were very small, when I first moved here, I actually saw a ball of light, and it was purple, bounce off that Regency mirror over there and shook the patio doors, and the children were petrified. And I saw a nun walk through and go through the doors and everything. And this is on a very strong ley line. So there was a convent just up the road, down Amington Lane.
Yeah.
And I believe it was just somebody passing through. So that night they slept in bed with me. They were petrified.
Yeah, we had some very strange stuff happen here, particularly when we're doing readings and things like that. Yeah, I mean, you actually hear things going on. If you're talking about an airman
going up there.
and things like that. Agility Bit says, I think ghosts are just a memory that has been preserved in a building or a place. And I could agree with that up to a point, because people say, yes, it's particularly if there's been something very intense happening there, so like someone being beheaded, for example, or something executed, or murders and things like that, and it leaves a residual energy around. But I've been thinking about that recently, and I used to strongly subscribe to that idea. But if that was the case, why don't we see the ghosts of living things, not just of the dead? Because if something terrible happened in a place, a murder, why don't the people that go to that spot also see the thing that's happened, say, where there's no death taken place, something terrible has happened, and you get a recall of it?
Probably they're not meant to. It's like sometimes if somebody's been in a road accident, they're actually coming up with a physical body, and somebody's come for them from the other side, but nobody else can see it. But they suddenly are in shock mode, shall we say, because it's like a visual picture that they're actually seeing their body on the ground in the accident, and they're thinking, hey, what am I doing here?
So there's lots of different ways we can think about it. Is it a spirit coming back because they got attachment? We talked about that. Is it an astral shell? We kind of talked about that idea too, haven't we? That there could be some part of
And
the
why,
form, or is it a recording?
Yeah, and I mean, there's always famous cases of a highwayman that's meant to be not far from here, headless, and you can hear the sound of horse hoofs and everything.
Yeah.
And that.
The only thing you see, then there's also, that's the other thing. Often a story gets out that there's a highwayman that runs down Allington Lane, for example, near us. And there's another highwayman that's supposed to be goes down by Wellow off to Carlo's Ice Creams, for example, right? So, you know, and they're all over the place. That's two within 20 miles of each other. And sometimes it's human sort of stories, and we see what we expect to see.
I like this one. Indigo. Yes, some friends of ours would speak of a house where one room had a cot which would be heard to rock. If you went to go in, a male voice would boom, "Get out." Now I can tell a story like that. My grandmother, she was in service and she was only 14, and she heard a baby crying. She went into this room, and this it was a wooden cot, and it was rocking backwards and forwards. She looked in, there was no baby there, and she heard that. And for that person to say that they heard a voice, "Get out, get out," it could be somebody that actually might have done something wrong there in that building and got fear, because I think sometimes a lot of ghosts, they can be fearful of people.
Oh, do you think so?
Yes, I do.
I certainly found that the spirit world, when we communicate with spirits through our mediumship, sometimes you've almost got to bully the spirit to come through, because they say, "Oh, I didn't believe that when I was here. I was a Christian. I didn't believe in all that." And then you have to almost have an argument with them, saying, "Well, look, you can either get your message to your loved one now, or you can be difficult. You know, you can feel the conversation going in your mind, and you're saying, 'Come on, then, if you're going to do it, do it. Let's get the message,' and they'll give you some evidence that you can tell the person." And I think the spirit world, they're just like us, really. It's that they don't suddenly become gods when they go over there.
Right, Patrice. Me and my sister saw our grandmother walk to the kitchen door 3 months after she died. First it was normal, but when we didn't hear or see her come in, we realised, oh yeah, she is death.
Dead.
Well, they put death.
Dead, I think. So she saw someone that had just died, basically.
A grandmother.
Yeah, and that actually is another good proof, isn't it? Of that is what I would call. I wouldn't call that a ghost. I'd call that a spirit, because that's the spirit of your grandmother. An apparition. Yeah, an apparition. I suppose all of these come under the class of apparition, really, don't they? When my nan passed, she came to visit us. She appeared at the top of the stairs, smiling to my daughter, which frightened her, and I felt a cold draft around her budgie cage. And when she passed.
No, we looked after
after. Yeah. Sorry, I misread it.
Well, obviously she's come back because she's come back on the vibration of love, just to let you know she's okay. And obviously you're looking after her budgerigard, and the cold breeze, which I call a psychic breeze, and that just to let you know.
So these are proofs from the spirit world you're getting here. This is different to what you see when you see the ghosts with the rattle and chains in haunted houses. We've kind of moved on here to talk about the spirit world itself, and we quite often, this is an interesting one. I saw a monk cross the road quickly when I was driving in Pluckley in Kent at night. I suddenly felt freezing cold. He went straight through the hedge. I mean, it would have been interesting, Gail, if you got some proof.
Were you dangerous in driving that he had to go through the hedge?
He did a runner. Yeah. So interesting. It's always monks, though, isn't it? Often we see these monks.
And they've got nothing to do with it. They've done it all here, so why not?
Yeah, would they become earthbound, a monk, or is that something, again, that's part of our fantasy? This is my cousin Sally.
No.
So she's talking about my nan. Nan saw her two sons after they died. I know, yes, and she saw them absolute solid. And my dad, I remember, saw my nan on my mum's side of the family, stood at the bottom of the bed. And my dad was an absolute skeptic about these things. He didn't believe in it.
And she was a school teacher.
And he saw my nan stood there, and she was all in pink. And it really shook him. She said, "All in pink? Why is he all in pink? She's all in pink." And she mentioned this to my uncle's wife, who had been in to see Nan laid out. And she came back and she said, "You know, she's all laid out in the coffin, and she's got a shroud on, and they've given her this beautiful pink shroud on." Yeah, and so my dad was absolutely convincing to him. And not only that, but when my nan appeared to him, she told my dad a load of information about the business, what was going to happen with it, because there were some problems with the business at that time, and it all happened, and it was all details that he could never have known himself. So she actually gave him a message, you know. So it was amazing.
Now tell me, have you ever been in a building and you felt you couldn't put your foot over the threshold because you felt it was quite spooky, or deja vu, that you felt you'd been there before? Because sometimes we can pick up energies going through buildings, and then you have flashes of seeing things.
There are places you just don't want to go in. I mean, we've been places like that. Dentists usually. Louise Russell, I think it does happen that where there has been trauma, an apparition of a living person could materialize. Yeah, I mean, they have done apparitions of the living with the Society of Psychical Research. There's good, interesting books on that. I've had one such mysterious experience concerning my eldest daughter. When I got home after seeing her, I rang her and found her to be in distress 10 miles away. I don't know if that's similar sort of thing. In fact, I think, Louise, those are some of the most fascinating things of the lot, when you see apparitions not of ghosts but of the living, you know. And people we often think of ghosts as being like the hooded monk sort of thing, but actually when you see a ghost, you see them really, it's just solid, just like a person in normal life. I remember I went to my uncle's funeral, and there was the chair where my uncle used to sit, and I came in, and almost absent-mindedly I said, "Oh, hello, Gordon." He was sat in the chair. I saw him solid as day. He was just sat there. I said, "Oh, hello, Gordon." And then I thought, just a minute, I'm at Gordon's funeral. And I looked, and again, and he's gone. But it was like solid. It wasn't sort of like my imagination. I saw it solid. And a lot of people say the same thing about when they see an apparition like this. They don't see some ephemeral, spooky, ghosty thing like in the movies. See the real thing.
There's a famous, really haunted house. It was called Borley Rectory, and every person that's lived there, the vicar and his wife, had seen a nun, heard screaming, and it's if they didn't like the vicar there. And mysteriously, one night, this house burnt down by itself.
Yeah, they pulled down the ruins of Borley Rectory, I remember, because
Essex.
They didn't want people going there who were curious, because it was a very famous story, the Borley Rectory stories, and they had, can't remember the ghost hunter that did it. He was very famous in
Price.
his
name was
Price. That's it. Price. That's it. And it was one of his cases. He was a skeptic, actually, Price. But it was an interesting. And there's a lot of good stories out there.
They always showed themselves, the nuns, and also to children. And children don't generally lie; they see something. And I remember it was the most haunted house.
Yes, that in Enfield, wasn't it? Was considered the most haunted houses in Britain. Every pub you've come across that calls itself the most haunted house becomes a bit of an attraction sometimes. But it's interesting to get your stories like we're getting here too.
Never heard of that one.
What do you reckon to Black Chuck? I never heard of it.
No.
My uncle and father both seen it. Big red eyes, frightening the heck out of them.
Never heard of it.
That's like I think I did hear something about that before, but to be honest, I don't have enough knowledge about that. That was something to do with the red-eyed people, wasn't it, or something?
No, you're thinking the Indigo Children.
No, that's no. Anyway, we can't answer that one. So Apple is saying, in the 1980s, as a teenager, I lived in a 1920s bungalow. The previous owner said that his wife had died in one of the bedrooms. There was a bad energy in this room. Well, yeah, I mean, that does the case. All right, carrying on here. Okay. Also, Try Mother told me that she had heard mysterious rustling. She in the room and had searched for the source. She couldn't find anything.
I don't feel there's anything bad.
Yeah. This is jumping to a second one. You do get strange feelings in some rooms, but just because somebody's died in a room doesn't mean to say it's bad. I mean, most old houses probably have had births and deaths in those houses, you know, and it doesn't mean to say that.
I think
it's bad. Perhaps there's an energy that's left behind.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting when Victorian children come through haunted buildings.
You see, our problem is folklore, really, isn't it? Because we there are real experiences, and there's some fantastically documented stories, particularly in the Society of Psychical Research. But there's also, you know, everybody starts telling ghost stories to each other, and we end up with a kind of a division between what is real and really happened and what is fantasy. And usually the fantasy stuff takes it to another level, and it all becomes super scary. And that's why everybody loves that scare thing you get from the idea of ghosts, don't you? Everybody likes to be a little bit scared, and we're all a little bit scared of death. And that's kind of, most entertainment really has this frightening aspect to it. So I think we can sometimes find ourselves getting distracted by Hollywood and what goes on the TV. Because like I say, when you see a spirit, it's normally not a frightening experience. It's normally something, it's almost like when I saw my uncle in that chair, it's almost something you take for granted, as if it's, oh, hiya, you know, like that.
Sad, this one, isn't it?
Do you want to read it out, Jane?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, my husband was killed by a drunk driver. A few days before, I had a feeling of dread that something would happen. I told him how I felt, but he didn't feel anything and went.
That's a premonition, isn't it?
So that's not so much a ghost, that's more like a premonition, like you say. Yeah. ESP, extrasensory perception, has different aspects. There's telepathy, and that can also be something that you can sometimes confuse with ghostly stuff.
It was a warning from beyond.
You see the future, precognition.
Well, perhaps it was a warning, a sensation in the solar plexus.
Yeah, so there's all these different aspects. So that would be a seeing the future type thing. That would be precognition, it would be called, or a form of clairvoyance. Sometimes that could be classed. Agility bits again. You're a very good writer for a dog, I must say. My parents and 2 dogs all clearly heard myself and my husband talking in the hall. We had left the house some time before. My parents insisted we must have come back. Perhaps we were living ghosts. So this is another example of apparitions of the living, isn't it, that you've got here? And there was some. I've never seen an apparition of the living, I don't think, in all my life. I can't think of any. Have you ever had anything like that where you've seen?
I think you're an apparition of the living, aren't you, Craig?
I've never seen anything like that. But I used to write a lot for the magazines and for the newspapers for years and years and years. That's a long haul. But I had so many instances of people writing in with these type of stories that you're sending in now, saying that they'd had seen apparitions of the living, but sometimes also they had glimpses of history too. I mean, which in a way is a bit similar to seeing a ghost, but they would see a glimpse of things as they were in the past. But they'd kind of walk into the scene, you know, and actually be part of it for a moment in time, and then suddenly find them back here, like a time travel. And that's quite common, that experience. I had a number that wrote to me that. They seem sensible people too. Jason. I wonder how many spirits there are on the average pub shelf.
Well, you seem to know more about it, Jason, than us.
Yes. Who knows? Pubs tend to be haunted places, and that seems a bit daft, really, because you wouldn't think they'd go there, would you? A castle nearby, where the last convicted witch of the Netherlands died in a cellar. I lived in this cellar when I was 10.
No, visited.
I visited. Oh, sorry, I'm misreading. I'm going cross-eyed. I visited this cellar when I was 10. I froze. I couldn't enter. Heavy energy, scary.
Well, you would be frightened as a child, wouldn't you?
And did you know the story before you went in, is the question, you know. Sometimes, I've never been to Belsen, but people say the story goes that the birds don't sing. They do sing in Belsen, but the eeriness of the place is such that you can feel the heaviness of the energy in places, don't you? I mean, and you can feel the opposite sometimes in places like places of worship, for example.
That's interesting, Suzanne. The house I live in now, my son was living here at the time and had water thrown over him in bed. Well, that's quite an active.
That's quite an amazing one. It'd be fantastic. I mean, if any of you have got really interesting stories, we'll come and investigate if you're close enough to us in the UK. We're based in Hampshire, and we're going to do. I was just telling them about what we're planning to do for the patrons, because we're going to try to do a seance just for patrons. Okay. And if you live close enough to us in Hampshire and you're a patron on the site, get in touch through the patron site, and we'll see if we can get together a group of us to go and do a haunted house investigation. And the rest of the patrons who are in America and that will do this live from the location, so that you can join in and share the energy with us. So that'll be announced soon on the patron site. And so some of you can physically come with Jane and myself, and we'll set it up, and we'll find a haunted location and see what we can pick up if we do a vigil there, and maybe do a seance at the place.
Now I want to get back to Suzanne before we go on this other one. Your son had water thrown over him in bed. Well, water is very spiritual. Tell me, is your son, when he grew up, was he very creative? Because I feel you're quite creative. Would you answer that, please?
Okay, well, we can wait for that one to come up in a moment. When I astral travel, could I be seen as a ghost? Yes, I think that's probably what happens when we get phantoms of the living, because I remember having an interesting story sent to me at my newspaper column that time, and the woman said, when she was, I can't remember the full details of it, but her daughter was pregnant and she was expecting, but she was still a while to go before the baby was due. And she saw her daughter appear solid in the room and say, "You've got to come to me now, Mum. You've got to come to me now." Right. And she saw this and was so convinced about what she saw, because she's, like I said, she saw it solid. She rang her daughter, couldn't get through, rang the hospital and found her daughter had gone into hospital and been called in. And it was her daughter had been calling her and had somehow projected herself to her mother's house and called her mother to come in and help. And these are common experiences. So is this a form of astral projection? Because the woman was, the daughter was not asleep, so she was not physically out of her body, but maybe we can send a sort of a mental image, a mental thought that can be projected to another location. You can read that one?
You can. You've got a lot to say.
I'm getting tired.
Good.
Okay, you want me to do it? Okay, my sister lived in a haunted house. In fact, many in the small town had stories of hauntings. There is a ton of history in the area about the war of 1812. So that would be the Napoleonic Wars. Yeah. The best part is my sister never told us, which helps with validity when multiple people hear the same thing. Yeah, this is when it gets really interesting, when a group of people can witness something. This is why when we do our mediumship, I know we do private readings for people and it can give tremendous validation to people sometimes, but I do like it when we do demonstrations of mediumship, because it's like the whole of the audience witness the proof of life after death, you know, and particularly if the person afterwards can say something about what happened to them. Because I remember when we do our demos, sometimes people stand up and tell us what had actually happened there. Go on, you read that one.
Indigo.
I'm getting hoarse.
I think I've seen a ghost carriage, horse or train, was walking home late at night and saw a large white mist move across the road, the size of a carriage Queen Victoria used to travel here to the Isle of Wight. That's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, she had her own personal railway line that ran all the way to Gosport, I think, to the Isle of Wight, didn't it?
Yeah, but we're talking about a carriage. Line.
So, yeah, that would be interesting. Lots of stories of ghost stories. Queen Victoria was very interested in spiritualism, you know, and she used to have seances. And John Brown was supposed to be, that's why she was so interested in the man, partly.
Or to bring her husband through.
To bring, what was his name? I'm tired.
John Brown.
Yeah, no, her husband. Albert's through, yeah. So she was very interested in that, and it wouldn't surprise me that if anybody was going to come back as a spirit, Queen Victoria would. In fact, she's supposed to have come through a few mediums.
Yeah, very strong.
As Princess Diana did with the work we did. If you have a look on our site.
Right, Suzanne. She's just answering what I said before. He's always been aware of spirit like me. He can be creative, and I think that's a lot of energy in someone's throwing water. It's like, I take that as a clearing from a past life, throwing water at someone. It's like a blessing.
Okay, so Nicola. Okay, hi again, Avocado. Yeah, nice to see you. Hi, Jane.
I like avocado.
Yeah, I love his site, and it's
When
nice
do you think you'd be again doing reading and personally love your energy? Well, I'm not doing personal readings one-to-one in my spiritual room at the moment because obviously the virus situation, and because a lot of people, not just elderly people, young people come to me, and I think one has to be very cautious. But it's not to say that I'm not doing telephone readings, because I've got to protect all of you as I've got to protect myself, because we've got a beautiful grandson that's got diabetic 1, so we've got to protect him the best we can.
Yeah, Jane always has people come to the house, and I tend to do the phone readings. That's kind of how we do it. So we can't both have people come to the house. So Jane, we agree between us. Jane does them from home, and I do them by phone. But it's nice to be able to reach out to people. We might, once we got our studio set up, we might be able to do some readings live like this. But as you'll see, it's quite difficult if we go by text message. But we might be able to set something up and do something perhaps with the patrons first to do some live seances. Yes, I love that. When my husband died, I started feeling him sit on my bed. It started the night he died, and it's still happening. That was 16 years ago.
He obviously has very strong attachment to you, Vicky.
And that must be very comforting, actually,
yes,
if you can feel
lovely.
that, actually. And I know a lot of people, I mean, you might think yourself a bit bonkers thinking that, but it's not, because the number of people that have a sense of connection with the spirit world and a feeling, particularly at night, that they're there.
Love.
And I don't think it's just us kind of conning ourselves. A skeptic would probably say, oh, you're just, it's fantasy. But it's not, because sometimes you get proof of it.
Well, we all like a bit of fantasy, Craig.
Yeah, but like I mentioned it before, Manan had one. I think Manan used to have the clock stop on the time of her son's death, and it would stop always on the day of his death at the exact time.
And it's always
8
been
o'clock.
It's always been known 4 o'clock. Mostly people pass over in the morning.
Often, yeah. So last question's coming up, folks, and don't forget, subscribe to this channel if you're here for the first time, and you'll get updates every time we go live. And don't forget, we've got 2 channels now. We're going to have more. We've got Domenico's channel there as well. Have a look in the description below when you've finished watching this, and click to the other channels to join those up, and we'll be introducing some new ones in due course. And if you really like the stuff, you'll get all of it fed into the patrons pages, and some unique stuff there from time to time as well. And also, obviously your comments in the patron pages, we're gonna answer, because you're supporting us and helping us not only to push this channel forward, but to help us eventually get to the point where we can have our own center and also do some spiritual work from there. So we want to be able to do our mediumship really in a free sort of way, where we can do the work and demonstrate mediumship and reach out to lots and lots of people simultaneously. So Gail Brody, when I visited my family home in Bristol years after my mum died, I heard my mum call my name. In the morning, my friends staying in the next room heard my name being called at night as well. So 2 people heard the name called then, basically.
Well, that gives proof, doesn't it? Again, that definitely was your mother calling you. And I feel that if we have strong love and attachment, then it's very easy for loved ones to come through to us.
Yeah, I think it's always good if you can get confirmation, isn't it? It's like with everything, with all this spirit work, you need to get verification and confirmation. It's what we call evidence. A medium's job is really only mediumistic work is just to give proof, to give evidence of the survival of the personality after death. Of course, people come for private readings and they want all messages and all things about their life, but really the essence of our work is mediumship. Most people that call us, for example, will come for readings are often about life problems, but you should ask us about mediumship, because that is when the evidence gets most fascinating. Because once the spirit makes a connection, all sorts of fantastic things happen.
Have either of you ever been scared during a haunting? No, I'm not scared.
No.
I'm not scared walking through a graveyard at night. Why should we? It's the living you've got to worry about, not the dead, so to speak.
I think I scared myself a bit as a kid, because I got involved in it as a teenager and things, and with Ouija boards and things. But I mean, I've never been into anything really where I've ever I mean, I've never been scared. I've seen mediums get
I think
scared.
you'll be more scared of me, Craig.
Yeah, I'm more scared of the living than the dead, definitely. Yeah, scared of putting a foot wrong. Yeah. So I don't think you should have any fear.
No, have no fear.
Have no fear in life at all.
Have no fear while we're here.
Very interesting conversation. Thank you both. We enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Thank
I'm
you,
glad
Lorraine.
you're enjoying it, guys.
Yeah, we enjoy connecting with you.
Very interesting. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Sally, for joining us again. Very comforting. It's nice that you're all enjoying this. A lot of work goes into this, as you know, and I'd like to say thanks to Domenico in the background here, who's been doing all the work. And go and have a look at his channel and his Odd Curiosities channel.
You two have a lovely week.
Because that's a really interesting channel too. And you know, we do a lot of this work just because we want to reach out to people and share our ideas. And it's nice that we're getting support, not just in the background, like with Domenico helping us tonight, but also with all you patrons out there helping us too. It's great to be doing this. It's nice to get the opportunity.
We love all of you too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for a wonderful conversation. Enjoyed my time, and blessings to you both.
And blessings to you.
Yeah,
Ricardo.
and to you as well.
Hope I know to meet you one day,
you work
my dear.
very hard as well. I know.
Yeah.
I know it's a fun channel, but it's a hard one. It's a hard, tough call sometimes, I think. And yeah, so it's great that you're all still interested. It's so much better than TV, this YouTube, I think. You know, I mean, on TV, we were made to do all sorts of things that we would not really us, you know. But when we worked with people on YouTube, mediums can really reach out. And I'm sure you guys enjoy that too, that we can be ourselves. Hi, William. Thanks, Craig and Jane. It was very interesting. That's nice.
Agility bits.
Yeah, and you got any suggestions too? Don't forget you can put comments below and share some more of your ideas. Share if you had some interesting experiences, put them in the comments, because you know we do get to read them and others will comment and it helps others
thank you too.
As well. So thank you. And thanks to Domenico.
Sally.
A great hour. Okay, we're going to have to say bye to you now, folks. Well, thank you very much. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel, become a patron, and go and put a comment and go and have a look at that description below if you want to follow our other channels. So we're going to say bye for now.